So it is 1 o'clock, but we'll give everybody about another minute, or whoever else wants to show up, another minute.
Hi, Kimberly. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Edna.
Hey.
All right, it's 1:01. We're going to get started, if that's okay with everybody. So I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come learn about work-based learning. This is not a new program on PCC's campus, but it's a relatively unknown program. Paula Hinman has actually been doing work-based learning for her DEEP program for 19 years. So it's definitely been at PCC, but not a lot of people know what it's about and how the structure is. I have one request for everybody. If you have questions, please don't put them in the chat. It can be distracting for participants, and I know that I am not going to be paying attention to the chat, so just jot them down, and then I have a couple places I'm going to stop where you can ask questions if you would like to. So whenever I am working with a new group of learners and I'm teaching a new concept, I like to start with a knowledge check. And we're going to use the annotation tool in Zoom to do our knowledge check today. You can find that at the top of your screen. There's a green bar to the right. It should say View Options. Scroll down to Annotate. A new bar will show up, and then you can click the stamp. And you can choose the star or check mark or whatever feels best. And then if you wouldn't mind annotating in that box for me, just so I know that everybody knows what's going on. Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to give people about 10 seconds to mark their annotations in the box, just so I know. If anybody needs help, you can unmute your mic and ask me.
How will we know if we hit our stamp if it worked? It shows up in the green?
Yeah, so you'll need to hold your cursor over the green box and then click, and your stamp should appear. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to clear that off, and then I'm going to have you use that same annotation tool. Oh, sorry. Same annotation tool on our spectrum. So are you somebody who's coming to this WBL training today and you know nothing about work-based learning? Or are you in the middle, or are you an expert? Could you take over this presentation if you needed to from me? Go ahead and mark on that spectrum if you guys don't mind. Where are you? Got a lot in the middle. Some novices, good. All right, I'm going to give you about 5 more seconds to make your mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So as you can see today, we have a varied group participating. And so when I was creating this PowerPoint, I had that assumption in mind. So we're going to go over a lot of things. I tried to not bog you guys down with too much information, but those of you who are on the expert side or near the middle, you're probably going to know some of the things that we review, but that's okay. You can just answer an email while I talk about it or whatever you want. So you notice that I'm going to start with the benefits of WBL. When I was teaching, they would always have these great new programs, and they would tell us how we're going to do it and what we're doing, and they would never really tell us why. And for me personally, I got to know the why for me to really invest and do a good job. So I'm going to tell you the why. I'm going to sell you on work-based learning, and then I'm going to tell you how it works, what you got to do, and all the nitty-gritty stuff. And then we're going to end with employer engagement, because that always seems to be a worry for the faculty members. How am I going to get my employers engaged? So I will tell you what work-based learning is, though. So work-based learning is a college course. Students continue their education in their program, but instead of doing it in the classroom, they're doing it in a relevant workplace. So don't think of WBL as a traditional internship. It's more closely associated with student teaching or a nursing practicum. It's really enhancing students' skills and knowledge in their particular field rather than just going into an office and making copies and coffee for somebody. And so it's designed to deepen their career knowledge. So the benefits, so I'm going to start with the soft skills and job relevant skills first. Students learn the knowledge, the concepts in the classroom, and they kind of conceptually know what they're going to need to do when they enter their future career, right? But they don't know how to do it. And so often graduates enter a workplace and they don't really know what they're doing. They don't feel comfortable doing it because they've never done it before. And I put soft skills in there because, I mean, even just this semester, I had an employer say to me, you know, Kimberly, I wish you guys did a soft skills training workshop, because our students are, not all our students, but a lot of our students don't know how to time management or organize or show up on time and those kind of things. So work-based learning is supposed to be a comfortable place where students can practice and get better at those skills. It also deepens their knowledge of their career field. So I went to school to be a music teacher, and as you can see, I fulfilled that dream. Just kidding. I knew all the concepts of teaching. I knew how to write objectives. I knew how to conduct, all those things, but I didn't really know how to be a music teacher until I went and did my student teaching. And then I knew, you know, how all those things I learned fit together. And that's what our students are doing as well. They're learning how all their new knowledge fits together so they can actually be a worker in the field. Got some drawing all over my screen. And so the next two things are experience and professional network. So I'm actually going to have you guys take a poll. So the first question is, what % of employers prefer candidates to have relevant job experience? And then blank new hires receive their job through referrals. If you guys can go ahead and answer those two questions for me. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to do that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end the polling. Thank you for participating. So a lot of you said 75%, and a lot of you said 6 out of 10 for this bottom one. So for the first question, 65% of employers prefer new hires to have relevant job experience. But 90% of our employers prefer students to have any job experience. So when we're training students before they graduate, we're making them more competitive and we're making sure they're successful after they leave us. And for the second question, this shocked me when I learned this. This was a study done by LinkedIn. 9 out of 10 people got their job through a referral. 9 out of 10. And when I learned that, my first thought was, professional network is as important as the experience. So we need to make sure we're encouraging our students to build that professional network, you know, learn who's in the field. So when they're looking for a job, they can contact their contact their person they know and say, hey, do you know who's looking, or can you recommend me for something? And that really helps them get their first job. And the last one is really exciting. It is great marketing for PCC. When employers work with good students, they know that PCC does a great job of training our students. And they know that when they hire this person, they're hiring someone who's knowledgeable, who has worked in this field before, and is going to do a great job. So employers suggest PCC to maybe their friends and family or coworkers. And then people want to attend, people know that the experience gap is there, and so they want to attend institutions that provide a better training than what a lot of universities or colleges are offering. So it really helps PCC kind of market and increase our program numbers. So those are benefits. I will say, for all of these to work, You need the student to do a really great job. It's like any other college course. The student gets what they put into it. If they're showing up and they're on their phone and they're not really listening, or they're grumpy or whatever, they're not going to get these benefits, and it's not going to be a profitable time. So we have to encourage our students to work hard. So here are the requirements for each of the course. 111, 112, and 115 are all course codes for our curriculum programs. For 111 and 112, the 160 and the 320 hours are the minimum. The student can obviously work more than 160 and 320 during that time. That's up to them. And the 3100 is the code for continuing education courses. And we like to set the minimum at 120 hours, but if students need more training, we can definitely have that increased. So 115, I skipped over that on purpose. So 115 is a course that supports 111 and 112. It's a seminar. And this is done between faculty and student. I'm not really involved with this course at all. And so the student and the faculty member, student or students, and the faculty member meet once a week for about an hour, and they just discuss what they're doing during the work-based learning experience. And it helps them kind of connect their ideas, and they can ask questions if they're a little bit too embarrassed to do it while they're doing their training. You are not required to have 115 during 111 and 112, but it's nice. But you can't have 115 without 111 and 112. So counting FTE, so every contact hour a student has during WBL counts for FTE. We cannot count past 320, however. I know the minimum for 112 is 320, but we can't count any more hours than 320. And the timesheet that I'll be discussing a little bit more later verifies those hours. And the great thing about the FTE is that this is more hours than a student is gaining in any other class. So this college is getting more money when students participate in WBL. There are prerequisites for the program. For the curriculum students, they need to have a GPA of 2.0 or higher, and they need to complete at least 24 credit hours. We do this so we know that students are prepared for their work-based learning experience. They're coming in knowledgeable, and they're not entering just kind of blank. And those two things help with that. And the other thing is WBL has to be a part of the program guide. Not just anyone can take work-based learning. For continuing education students, they need to be registered in a CE course that is 96 hours or more. And then the student needs to complete at least half of those hours. And again, that just assures that they have at least a baseline knowledge for when they're training on site. So now we're going to talk about the documents. WBL has a lot of documents, and it's just part of the compliance, and we have to make sure that we're following those requirements. I'm going to take you through the application. Hopefully you guys can see that now. So we have changed all of them to e-forms, and there's a couple of reasons I did that. One, students sometimes have messy handwriting, and we want to make sure that we have very clear documentation of what they're doing. The second reason is all these little stars indicate that the information is required. I can't tell you how many times students would just skip a section. I don't know why they would skip it, but they would skip it and send me their form, and it would be incomplete. Another benefit is that when you submit an application, you have to submit a resume, and you cannot submit this form without attaching a resume, which is great because a lot of people don't like to send me their resumes. Now they don't have a choice. And lastly, there is this little scroll or finger pad signature. So on the computer, they can use their mouse to sign, or on their phone, they can use their finger to sign. And it's a better verification for us that the student actually signed it, and then they date it and they submit it at the bottom. And then I get an email, and it is time and date stamped. So that also helps with the whole compliance thing. They know that we are actually getting these forms back when we say we are. I'm also using QR codes to help students access our WBL application, and I have worked with Beth to have the application on our new website on the Work-Based Learning page, so that way students can submit the application pretty soon after they register for the course. So that helps me get them placed faster. So before the student starts, I collect their application and resume. Once I place them, I get a job description. I send that to the students so they know what they're going to do. And then I create a work-based learning calendar for them so they know when these forms are due. So I'm not going to click on all of these forms, but I did post the PowerPoint in the chat if you would like to open that up and click through them as I talk about them. That's totally up to you. So the orientation form, that's just an agreement. That's just a signature. The student signs that they participated in the orientation. They understand everything that's required of them for the work-based learning experience. Next is the education agreement. So the student and employer cannot work together until I have this signed education agreement. And it says that, you know, the student agrees to participate and do a good job and show up. The employer agrees to provide an equitable and safe and educational workplace. The faculty advisor agrees to support the student and submit grades, and then I'd agree to do all the things that I do. So that is very important for the program. Next are the measurable learning objectives. This is by far the most dreaded form that the students complete. They do not like doing it. And so the measurable learning objectives are the goals for the semester, and the student decides these goals, but they have to be measurable. So, you know, if you're an educator, you've probably written objectives and you know that, you know, the student will be able to do this, and you can kind of see the growth from there, but our students aren't used to using that language. And so you have to help them kind of create these goals that they'll be able to track and be able to work towards, and they do not like it. But even though it's uncomfortable, it's good for them to choose their own goals during this because it kind of makes the learning on them, which is always good for our students. And those are due 2 weeks into the WBL. In the middle, before grades are due, I or the faculty member will conduct an on-site visit. So the on-site visit has to be on-site. You can't do it over the phone or through email. They really want you to be in person, talking to the employer, observing the student. During these COVID times, there is an exception if the employer will not let you on-site, but you have to document that in order for you to do an off-site kind of virtual visit. So that's the only exception. After the on-site visit is complete, then the faculty advisor completes this midterm evaluation. And this is kind of like the grading sheet. And so you can write down where the students are at and if they're satisfactory, if they're on track for their hours, that kind of thing. At the end of the semester, the employer and the student complete an evaluation. So the employer is evaluating the student. I don't know why, but students always ask me, am I evaluating the employer? No, that's not really what this is about. So the employer evaluates the student. For both of those forms, those MLOs come back. And so both the employer and the student have to evaluate the student's progress on the MLOs. And that's why making them measurable is so important. Because if the student says, I'll get better at typing, well, how will we know if you got better? Where did you start? Where do you want to end? We need to know those, and we need to know that before we can really say that your goals are set. And lastly is the timesheet. So all those forms are really important and they're all required for compliance. The timesheet is the most important. This verifies the hours of the students. So the compliance officers are looking for were the students working during their scheduled class time, because that cannot happen. WBL is supposed to support the education of students, not distract from it. They're looking to see specifically when the student works. So I always tell students, when you finish a shift, write it down. You're not going to remember a week or 2 weeks or at the end of the semester. You're not going to remember exactly when you work. So just write it down for me. That way we know your timesheet is accurate and I'm not fighting with you at the end to figure out when you worked. The timesheet is a fillable PDF. It is not a form, and that's because the students have to update it every day, every week. I also attached that in the chat if you would like to look through it or if you just want to have that for your records. The orientation. So the orientation is between 1 to 2 hours. We can't count more than 2 hours as contact hours for the FTE, so we like to cap it at 2. During this time, we like to talk about the documentation, the expectations, just review soft skills, job etiquette, just kind of prep them for entering the workforce. And it's nice because it helps calm students down. They're always nervous. I have a student who is doing a pharmacy tech WBL. She started last week, and this poor woman called me 5 times to just ask me if her shoes were okay, if it would be okay if she did this. You know, anybody is nervous entering a new workforce. So this orientation just brings together everybody and kind of cools their nerves. And I like to do it the first day because the orientation can be what signifies the participation of students in the class, and that's important for the census date. And so that way we can say the student was active in this class the first day because they participated in orientation. And the people who conducted are me and the faculty advisor. So in my dream non-COVID world, the orientation would be all the students, and we would meet, and I would start the orientation, and I would talk about everything I need for WBL, and then we would have breakout groups based on faculty advisors, and the students would start working on their MLOs, but unfortunately I don't get my dream. And so right now I'm working on doing a recorded orientation where students listen to my PowerPoint with a voiceover, and then at the end they submit a quiz and they sign the agreement, and then that kind of just verifies that they submitted or they completed the orientation. Oh, actually I'm gonna stop after this slide for questions. This is the general curriculum calendar for when these things are due, just to kind of review because I mentioned it here and there. So when students are registering, they need to submit the application. Before the student starts, I get the job description and their transcript together, and then I like to talk with the student about what the expectations are. Orientation is first day of classes. Education agreement has to be submitted by the first day of the WBL, whenever that is. MLOs are 2 weeks. On-site visit is before midterm grades. And then the employer self-evaluation and time report are due on the last day of classes. So I'm going to stop right here. Does anybody have any questions before I continue? Fantastic. Then let's keep going. So what is the process for registering and applying for WBL? Student registers whenever the registration window opens. After they register, they submit the WBL application, hopefully found on the webpage whenever that is available. And then I get the application and I start working on placements. And before I talk to the student, I talk with the faculty advisor, and the faculty advisor approves the placement. And then I meet with the student to discuss the placement. So that's just kind of a more succinct way to understand the process. Now, for continuing education, this process is the same way. It just doesn't follow those same semester guidelines. So we're using that same type of system. Roles and responsibilities. So as the faculty advisor, the main role is for you to support the student submit grades, and you're constantly connecting classroom knowledge to the workplace the students are in. And just so we're making sure we're growing those skills. We don't want the WBL to be not profitable. We want to make sure that students are learning while they're working. Also, all those forms I talked about, the faculty advisor has to sign them. And so you approve all those forms. My job is I work with employers to place students. I collect all the paperwork, so you don't really have to worry about that. I just collect it and I send it to you for a signature. I like to meet with students and talk with them so they know that they have somebody besides you in case they need me if you're not available. I help you conduct on-site visits. Some faculty advisors prefer to do their own, some don't, so I'm happy to do that. And then I try to help you as best I can in any way. Well, employer engagement, this always seems to be the scariest part when starting a new WBL, and it can be the toughest part. I always like to start with any business partners you know of. You know, if you worked with a buddy in such and such business, you know, contact them first. You know, are you interested in some interns? Are you interested in working with us to train our students? They might say yes. They usually say yes. I don't know. And then I post on the Caswell and Person County Chamber of Commerce when we have students available. I got a lot of employers that way. It works really well. I look through I look through employer web pages for internships. I also have an internship page that I look through from time to time. And then if I'm really, really, really desperate, I will cold call. It doesn't work well to cold call because you'll always get a front desk associate and they don't know what to do with your call. So you get sent to somebody who doesn't really know what to do with your call. And sometimes you might get an employer from it, but in my experience, it's not the best. We do offer virtual work-based learning, which was a really great opportunity during when everything was really closed down back in March through, I guess, June. I will say after working with students in the virtual format, it is not for everybody. It is not easier, it's just different. And the student really has to be good at time management and self-determination. They have to be willing to kind of control their own learning. And if a student really isn't there yet, they're not going to be able to do the virtual work-based learning. And the way this works is Polestar is kind of like the mentoring company. So Polestar creates this cohort of students and they work with students to develop their soft skills and kind of talk about what it means to work in a office or whatever. And they build their resume, but then Polestar also connects students with a real employer. So instead of just working with an employer, the student in the virtual format is working with an employer and kind of a mentor at the same time. So it's a little bit different than our traditional WBL. So when I started here in February, I created this short-term goal of having 17 programs by summer 2021 and at least 35 students per semester. The 35 students isn't looking good. We kind of are struggling with our registration numbers right now. And then at the long-term goal is to have a work-based learning experience for every program at the college, and that includes continuing education programs with 96 hours or more. So that's kind of where we're working towards. So before I go to my next slide, I'm going to have you guys participate in another poll. I'm going to pull it up. So how many programs currently offer WBL? How many programs do you think currently offer WBL? Okay, I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 23% of you got it correct. We currently offer 16. So I was practicing this presentation with my husband last night and I did this poll and I excitedly said 16. And he said, you gave yourself a whole year to add one program? And it kind of gutted me. So I'll tell you that we started with 9 and we are now at 16. So that's good growth. We're not just like still working on one program the entire time I'm working here. So we now have 16. And I'm gonna stop that. And so here are the programs that currently offer WBL. Right now we have somebody in the pharmacy tech and Google IT doing WBL. The Google IT person is actually on campus working with our IT department, so that's pretty exciting. The mechatronics and industrial systems, this summer will be the first time that they have students in placement, so that's exciting. The agricultural maintenance and plant sciences, this past summer was the first time they really did work-based learning and it was pretty successful. So we got a good number. We have a lot of work to do though. There's a lot of programs. So we're going to end this by doing one last knowledge check. If you wouldn't mind using that same annotation tool and marking along the spectrum of where you feel your ability to answer students' questions is at now. So do you think that you could answer anybody's questions about work-based learning, or do you still not feel very comfortable? And if you're somebody who doesn't feel comfortable or is kind of in the middle and you have questions for me, you can reach out to me. I love talking about work-based learning. So definitely reach out to me and ask whatever questions you're confused about, or we can set up a time to meet. But I hope after this short 30-minute presentation, you guys feel like you understand what work-based learning is a little better. So I'll give you about 3 more seconds to add your annotation. 3, 2, 1. And if you have any questions, you can go ahead and unmute your mic and ask away. And if you don't have any questions, thank you for joining us. You can hop off.
Hey, Kimberly, this is Andre Davis. I just wanted to say that excellent job in helping with, I know, my understanding. Just a couple of things. One, I noticed that there was a webinar that Polestar facilitated, and I watched that entire webinar, which, you know, again, helped my understanding, especially with the whole virtual piece and virtual WBL. And then the other is that I'm familiar with this particular model of WBL. In Salisbury, they use something called Career Navigator, which is very similar, where they have students that go on site, and there's someone who actually goes on site to check in with students to see how they're doing and in the whole process. But great job. I like the way it looked.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, Kimberly. And just to echo Mr. Davis, I thought it was a great presentation. But also to add, with the students, when they're doing the application process for WBL and they have to do a resume, I wanted to also share that our Career Coach website helps them do that resume. So that website is actually found on our PCC main page, and you just go to Career Coach and students can go in and do a resume on that website. So you're right, they don't have to be fearful of doing a resume because we have tools that will help them do that. Great presentation.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing that. Anybody else have any questions?
Kimberly, you have a third here letting you know it was an awesome presentation. You straightened out a few questions I personally had about it. In the beginning, I was thinking it was, you know, closer to the end of closer to graduation for their WBLs, but now I know they can do it after 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that.
That's because some people really prefer their WBL to be in the summer, and so that gives them that flexibility. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
All right, well, thank you. That clears that up. And I was gonna also piggyback off of Ms. Stonemoy about the resume information. We're here to help with that as well. Me and Tiana.
And I do have that information in my brochure for students. I just didn't mention it today. So I appreciate you guys echoing that.
Thank you.
If that is all, I will let you guys go. And if you think of a question afterwards, give me an email or give me a call. I didn't add my contact information either, but that's on the website. So I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Kimberly.
Bye.